Before I rambled about movies on YouTube, I was a professional machine learning engineer. I'm still a professional engineer, but now I do something a lot less interesting. Nonetheless, I, like many people, have been following along the rise of ChatGPT as it becomes maybe one of the best known algorithms of all time, at least to the general public, I guess. Who knows? And naturally, the question has arisen, can it do what I do? Can it review movies? Can it replace this channel? Today, we're going to try and figure out the answer to that question simply by reading some reviews that I asked it to write for me. I gave ChatGPT a relatively simple prompt along the lines of write a 5-paragraph analysis of the movie from a certain year. So I chose the word analysis to try and hopefully spur on a little bit more insight than maybe what a review might contain. And I gave ChatGPT the year and the name of the film just so there's no confusion about what we're talking about. And I started out with a fairly well-known movie, a very famous film called Blade Runner. I'll read you a little bit about what ChatGPT said, and then we'll discuss if this is a good review, and then we'll go on to some much more interesting choices and see if it can handle more obscure and complex films. So here's what ChatGPT said about Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a 1982 science fiction film directed by Ridley Scott and starring Harrison Ford. The film is set in a dystopian Los Angeles in 2019, where genetically engineered replicants or artificial humans are used for dangerous and menial work on Earth's off-world colonies. Ford plays Deckard, a retired Blade Runner who is tasked with hunting down and retiring 4 rogue replicants who have returned to Earth. So far, so good. The film's visuals are striking and have aged well, depicting a dark and neon-lit future that has had a lasting influence on science fiction cinema. Again, reasonable thing to say. Saying that it has aged well, a little unclear what that means or how you might back that up, but fair enough. The film's use of futuristic architecture and special effects are especially noteworthy, creating a sense of a believable, lived-in future world. The film's portrayal of Los Angeles as a crowded, polluted metropolis also speaks to the anxieties of the time about urbanization and environmental degradation. Interesting. Certainly there's some things about anxiety there. General anxiety about urbanization, I guess. Environmental degradation, I guess. Reasonable review so far. Maybe more details would be nice, but, 5 paragraphs, whatever. The film's themes of what it means to be human and the blurring of the lines between humans and artificial beings are thought-provoking and still relevant today. The replicants in the film, who are programmed with a limited lifespan and are physically and mentally superior to humans, raise questions about the nature of consciousness and the morality of creating artificial life. Deckard's struggle to distinguish the replicants from humans also highlights the theme of the other and the fear and prejudice that can arise when people encounter those who are different from themselves. And then, I'm not going to go through the rest too deeply, but it mentions the score by Vangelis. The use of the recurring theme tune, Tears in the Rain, in particular, has become iconic and synonymous with the film. And overall, Blade Runner, I guess, is a classic of science fiction cinema and a depiction of a dark, neon-lit, we get that word again, future, has had a lasting influence on the genre. Again, a lasting influence. Its visuals, themes, and score are all highly acclaimed, making it a must-see for fans of science fiction and film in general. The film has been widely discussed and debated for its multiple interpretations of meaning, blah, 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 blah. There's lots of reason to watch again, find new perspectives. Okay, that's the review of Blade Runner. Decent review, really. A solid summary of the film, a solid summary of what most people think about the film. It's interesting to see that ChatGPT brings up that this movie is partially about blurring the lines between humans and artificial beings. That might seem sort of spooky, but remember, ChatGPT is not actually watching the movie here, not drawing any conclusions, not analyzing the movie. Instead, it's synthesizing reviews from a bunch of text, which includes a lot of other reviews. So for a very famous movie like Blade Runner, we would expect it to be pretty good at stitching together various reviews and being able to write a convincing review of its own, so to speak. And this point about the blurring of the lines, this is sort of the top-level thing about Blade Runner. This is one of the biggest themes, the most obvious themes, and it is based on a book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That title in itself captures this idea, right? So this idea is definitely the training corpus. So maybe not as spooky as it first seems, but like I said, overall, a decent review. This is not academically insightful. I would say there's a cool book written by Steve Buchatman, I guess is how you pronounce his name, about Blade Runner as part of the BFI Film Classics. And you should read that if you're curious what real insight about the film is like. But as a review, that's fine. Okay. I had a feeling that that was going to be the result for famous movies. But I want to dive down into things that are a little bit less well known or just a little bit less widely discussed, and see if ChatGPT can synthesize some analysis on those films. So I have a number of different options here, and we'll go through most of them. I'm not going to read through all of it. I've glanced at these reviews before, but I haven't really dug into them yet. So this is, for the most part, my reaction. So the next movie I chose to do is The Nun Story, which is from 1959. It's directed by Fred Zinnemann. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. Has had an enormous influence on my life. And I happen to have a fair amount of sort of background knowledge of this page. I'm also curious about this because I've contributed pretty extensively to the Wikipedia page for this film, and I'm curious if any of that, that information sneaks its way into ChatGPT's analysis of the film. This is still a relatively famous movie, but much less well known than Blade Runner. And there's not a ton of scholarly work about this. There are a couple chapters here and there that touch on the Nun Story, the book, and the film. So anyway, without further ado, here is what ChatGPT said about the film. The Nun Story is a 1959 film directed by Fred Zinnemann and starring Audrey Hepburn. The film is based on the 1956 autobiography of the same name by Belgian-born nurse Gabrielle van der Mol. So we got to stop here because that is not correct. That's actually, that's kind of funny. So Gabrielle van der Mol is the name of the character played in the film by Audrey Hepburn, but the book is written by Catherine Hulme, and also it says of the 1956 autobiography, but the book is not an autobiography. The book is written by Catherine Hulme about a nurse named Mary Louise Habits. So not an autobiography, and neither the author nor the real person is Gabrielle van der Mol. Now the character in the movie is Gabrielle van der Mol. So we're not way off, but one sentence in, a little bit concerning. Anyway, which tells the story of her experiences as a nun in the Catholic Church. The film follows the character of Sister Luke, played by Hepburn, as she enters a Belgian convent and goes through the process of becoming a nun, including her training and her work as a nurse in the Congo. So otherwise, I mean, that is more or less, on the money. One of the film's main themes is the struggle for individuality and self-expression within the rigid structure of the Catholic Church. Sister Luke, who takes the name of Gabrielle upon entering the convent. Ooh, whoops, they got that backwards. Gabrielle, who takes the name of Sister Luke upon entering the convent, is what that should say, struggles to reconcile her desire for a meaningful and fulfilling life with the strict rules and expectations of the church. The film also explores the complexities of faith and the questioning of one's belief, as Sister Luke grapples with her own doubts and struggles to find a sense of purpose and fulfillment in her life as a nun. True, this is a deep film, and I would just say there's a lot more to it than that, but on a high level, we're in the right territory. The film also offers a critical look at the Catholic Church's attitudes towards women and their role in the church. Sister Luke is often at odds with the male-dominated hierarchy, who see her as a subordinate and limit her opportunities for advancement. In the film, we actually don't run into the male-dominated hierarchy of the church very much. That's not to say that there aren't patriarchal aspects to the church, but Sister Luke mainly comes up against the Mother Superior, for instance, and a lot of the women who run the convent, I would say, have more of an influence on her trajectory than the men. So this is interesting. The film also offers a critical look at the Catholic Church's attitude toward women and their role in the church. I think there is something to that, but I wouldn't put that very high on the list of things that this movie is about. This is almost reading the movie in a sort of 2023 political lens to some extent, which I'm not sure is correct. Anyway, the film also highlights the ways in which the church's rigid gender roles can be oppressive for women and limit their agency. Certainly, this is a film that is about the rigidity of the convent life. Again, maybe we're sneaking a little bit of our modern frame into this, though. The performances in the film are also noteworthy, there's that word again, particularly that of Audrey Hepburn as Sister Luke. Hepburn delivers a nuanced and powerful portrayal of the character, capturing her complexity and inner turmoil as she struggles to find her place within the church. Well, this is probably Audrey Hepburn's finest role, without a doubt. Well, probably. The film also features a strong supporting cast, including Edith Evans as the Mother Superior and Peter Finch as a doctor with whom Sister Luke falls in love. Incorrect. Sister Luke does not fall in love with the doctor, or it's at least much more complicated than a simple love story. Here's a good rule of thumb about a movie about a nun. If the nun falls in love in the movie, it's a bad movie, okay? Good movies about nuns are mature, and the nuns follow the rules. And that is the case in The Nun Story for the most part. Well, completely, actually. Overall, The Nun Story is a thought-provoking and powerful film that offers a nuanced and critical look at the Catholic Church and the experiences of women within it. The film's exploration of themes such as individuality, faith, and gender roles makes it a worthwhile watch for anyone interested in these topics. It is a powerful and emotionally charged film that will resonate with audiences of all backgrounds. Okay, again, I mean, this is fine, but to me, this sounds a little bit like a review that maybe a high school student would write, or somebody in Film Studies 101 or something like that. I don't think this strikes at really the depth of the movie at all. And a lot of the things that are being said about this, like, oh, Audrey Hepburn is great and delivers a very nuanced performance, that is a pretty generic statement that you could say about a lot of different movies and that you would find in reviews from a lot of different movies. And so perhaps no surprise that we find it here. There's also, as we've mentioned, three pretty big factual blunders in this, which is a little bit alarming. Most importantly, though, I think is, again, just not particularly insightful. It's interesting, this thing about the gender roles, certainly that is an aspect of the movie, and I think that maybe what I would have said about gender in the film is that Hepburn becoming a nun underscores how limited options for women were, and her struggle through life, particularly with the war, definitely underlines a lack of agency. But that is slightly different from talking about the gender roles in the church itself. So I don't know. I think that to me, I don't want to like discount that, because I do think that that's in the ballpark of something that the movie is very much about. But to me, the way it's phrased here really just doesn't exactly ring true. So again, decent, I guess, but not particularly insightful, and had some big mistakes in it too. Now I want to do a really obscure movie that's been reviewed on this channel. So all the other movies here will be reviewed on this channel. I have never reviewed Blade Runner because it's been done, and I want to do it right. And I've never reviewed The Nun Story because it's such a meaningful film for me. I've tried at times to sort out all my thoughts on it, but I've never been able to. But all these other movies that I'm going to do, I have videos on, so you can go compare what I said to what ChatGPT said. Hopefully I can remember what I said when I try to address these reviews. But this movie is Notes Towards an African Orestes, which is a film by Pasolini from 1970. And this is not a very well-known movie at all. When I asked ChatGPT to review it, it actually said it had never heard of the movie, and I had to change the title to Notes Towards an African Oresteia, which, as I understand, is not the title of the film, although I personally think it should be called Notes Towards an African Oresteia. But all the references I've seen to the English title say Notes Towards an African Orestes. Anyway, here's what ChatGPT had to say about it. Notes Towards an African Oresteia is a 1970 film directed by Peter Brook. No, it isn't. It's directed by Pasolini. And based on the ancient Greek tragedy Oresteia by Aeschylus. The film is set in an unspecified African village and adapts the story of the Oresteia to a contemporary African context. It explores the themes of justice, revenge, power, and tradition. So there's some inaccuracies here. First of all, the film is not set in an unspecified African village. The film explores a lot of different locations in Africa, and they're all, I think, it's pretty much specified where they are. There's a couple more villages, it's not exactly clear, but they visit some pretty well-known locations. The movie is also set partly in Europe, in Rome at a university. It's also the crucial thing about this movie is that Notes Towards an African Oresteia is a sort of, it's not really a movie exactly. It's not really a film. It's a set of notes that Pasolini made when he was thinking about making the movie. So he travels around Africa and he thinks, maybe I could cast this person as Electra or whatever. This would be a good location. It's not actually the film itself. The review so far does not seem to pick up on that fact. Okay. One of the film's main strengths is its ability to adapt the ancient Greek story to a modern African setting. So this is interesting because why would Pasolini doing this thing, trying to adapt the Oresteia? So again, the movie doesn't adapt it because this is just a notes about making the movie. But why was he trying to do this in the first place? It's because there were some people at the time in the 60s who thought that Africa, basically in the 60s, partly because of some of the sort of post-colonial moments that were happening there, was having a similar moment to ancient Greece at the time of the Orestes. Now, anyone today, I think, would think that this is just kind of ludicrously Eurocentric. And when Pasolini goes and interviews some like African students studying at the University of Rome, they basically point this out to him, and he doesn't end up making the movie, right? So, in fact, the idea that sort of the African village is a good analog for ancient Greece is a bit ludicrous, almost laughably Eurocentric. And yet ChatGPT says one of the film's main strengths is its ability to adapt the ancient Greek story to a modern African setting while maintaining the core themes of the original text. So interesting. It's not exactly endorsing this necessarily, but it certainly doesn't seem to be aware of everything I was just explaining about the kind of goofy context that the movie was made in. The film uses traditional African music and dance to connect the story to its setting. It does. It also uses jazz in the film. So one of the things that's really odd about this movie is that in the opening credits, one of the first people introduced in the film is Gato Barbieri, who's a saxophone player. And when you watch the movie, you wonder, why does it say, notes towards an African Oresteia, introducing on saxophone, Gato Barbieri? What is going on? Well, because there's jazz in the movie. Jazz is an African-American thing, which Pasolini actually mentions in the film. He thinks that it had a similar sort of tradition and struggle, but he does acknowledge that it's from America, not exactly from Africa, not directly, at least. So the idea that it uses traditional African music and dance to connect the story to its setting, partly. It is true that toward the end of the movie, he does comment on a dance happening in a village, so it's not totally off the mark, I guess. Anyway, the film also explores the themes of justice and the power of tradition, which are still relevant today. The power of tradition is not in this movie, as far as I can recall. The film's portrayal of the characters and their struggles is also noteworthy, there's that word again, making the story both relatable and poignant. Again, this kind of reads like it could be a review of any movie, at least in parts, right? The film's portrayal of the characters and their struggles is also noteworthy, making the story both relatable and poignant. Literally, copy and paste that wherever. Kind of sounds like some high school student trying to hit a word count in their essay about a movie they didn't watch, right? The film explores the theme of revenge, which is a key aspect of the original Oresteia. The film presents the idea that revenge can lead to a cycle of violence and that true justice can only be achieved through forgiveness and reconciliation. Not really. The story of the Oresteia talks about the transition from I'm not going to be able to remember the terms, but talks about basically the birth of civilization happening at the same time as the birth of the courts and the birth of justice, which supplants the idea of revenge. So that it is to not seek revenge is perhaps the civilized thing to do. But this thing about, forgiveness and reconciliation and cycles of violence, not quite the same. I mean, it's not super far off, but to me, it just seems a little weird to discuss in that way. This theme resonates with the current situation in many parts of Africa, where the cycle of violence and revenge is still a major problem. That's kind of a weird thing to say. I mean, I guess. The film's use of music and dance is also noteworthy. Noteworthy again, and also we already heard about the music. The traditional African music and dance in the film help to connect the story to its setting and create a sense of authenticity. Seems like we already read this, and again, I sort of already debunked this. The film's use of song and music also helps convey the emotions of the characters and the themes of the story. Again, take that sentence. The film's use of song and music also helps to convey the emotions of the characters and the themes of the story. This could be any movie. I'm not going to read the last paragraph. Clearly, this is not a very good review. We have, in the beginning, a huge factual error directed by Peter Brook. It doesn't even get the director of the movie right. Seemingly, it doesn't understand the overall context of the movie, sort of the ontology of the movie. As, like I said, this isn't exactly a movie. It's like a production diary, like a behind-the-scenes thing. It doesn't get the overall sort of moral context of the movie, which is that this was like really goofy and extremely weird thing. And it seems to just be pretty wrong about a lot of these elements. And then everything else in the movie that's not inaccurate just seems so generic that it is totally useless. So it's like either it contains incorrect information or just hopelessly generic information. So truly not a very good review. Again, I'd encourage you to go watch my review on the film. Very interesting movie. You may or may not want to watch it yourself. Okay. We're moving on. I asked it to review Holy Motors. Holy Motors is a pretty famous film. I think it won the Golden Palm in 2012, but it's a pretty weird movie. So let's see what it can make of that. Holy Motors is a 2012 French film directed by Léos Carax and starring Denis Lavant. The film is a surrealist fantasy that explores the nature of identity and the role of art in our lives. The film follows the character of Monsieur Oscar, played by Lavant, as he travels around Paris in a white stretch limousine, assuming different identities and performing various appointments throughout the day. It's interesting to see where it's using quotation marks. One of the film's main strengths is its ability to blur the lines between reality and fantasy. The film's use of surreal imagery and dreamlike sequences creates a sense of disorientation and unease that reflects the protagonist's confusion and disconnection from reality. The film's use of various identities and characters that Monsieur Oscar takes on also adds to the theme of identity and exploration in the search of self-discovery. Yeah, vague. Doesn't hit home exactly. The film's portrayal of the role of art and performance in our lives is also noteworthy. The film presents the idea that art is not just a form of entertainment, but also a way of understanding and expressing the world around us. That's an extremely generic statement. Yeah, the movie is about what it means to be an artist, particularly what it means to be a filmmaker, a director, an actor, something like that. But, yeah. Oscar's various appointments are seen as performances that allow him to express different aspects of himself and the world. Yeah, on some level, that's true, I think. The film also explores the idea that art can be a form of escape as well as a way to connect to others. Useless statement. Film is escapism, extremely well-known idea. Something to that. That's not what this movie's about. The film's use of cinematography and visual effects is also noteworthy. And again, the film's use of cinematography and visual effects is also noteworthy. What? Come on, that has nothing to do with this movie. The film's use of long takes and tracking shots also adds to the dreamlike quality of the film and create a sense, and that's a grammatical error. The film's use of long takes and tracking shots add to the dreamlike quality of the film and create a sense of movement and fluidity. It's the film's use that's singular. It should be creates. So, grammatical issue. Anyway, the film's use of color and lighting also adds to the film's surreal atmosphere, creating a sense of otherworldliness. So, again, a whole bunch of vagaries. Basically, overall, Holy Motors is a visually striking and thought-provoking film that offers a unique and surrealist exploration of the nature of identity and the role of art in our lives. The film's use of surreal imagery and dreamlike sequences is both disorienting and captivating, and its exploration of various identities and characters that Monsieur Oscar takes on makes it a worthwhile watch for anyone interested in these topics. It's a challenging and polarizing film that will likely appeal to fans of art house and experimental cinema. So, this is a pretty well-known movie. Like I said, it won the Golden Palm. At the high level, it gets summary information, right? I mean, here we get the director, we get the actor, things like that are correct. Yeah, surrealism, okay. Has something to do with art. Okay. It's thought-provoking, sure. It's got somewhat extreme style, long tracking shots. I actually don't really recall that being a hallmark of the film. I think there's one or two tracking shots in it, but didn't stick out to me at least. Maybe I've forgotten about that part. Art house, experimental, sure. On a very high level, okay. One step down from that, things really start to fall apart when it tries to make some sort of philosophical conclusions. It doesn't really do anything better than, yeah, it's something about the nature of art or something like that. My review of this movie is 45 minutes long, I think. Hugely important movie to me. A work of genius, I think. The movie, not the review. But if you're curious what I think this is actually about, you should go check that out. Okay, I know we're... maybe you get the point by now, but I've got a couple movies left, I think, that will really hammer home the point. Already we can kind of see, though, that even when we get reviews that are factually correct, even when we get things that are where the summary information is true, overall we get a review that I think is just usually not very interesting or insightful. These big movies that a lot of people have talked about, we still get really surface level information that I would be disappointed by, I guess, to read if it were presented as an analysis. We're going to go to a slightly more obscure movie now, Chess of the Wind. I've also reviewed this. Great movie. This is a really interesting movie that was lost for a long time. If you haven't heard of it, that's probably why. But if you like sort of international cinema, art house cinema, different kinds of movies, you should watch Chess of the Wind because it is really different and probably not what you expect. Anyway, here's what ChatGPT had to say. The chess game of the wind. Oh, also, it couldn't find it when I told it chess of the wind, only when I said the chess game of the wind, even though a human could easily figure out that those titles are used interchangeably, and in fact, even Google knows that. The Chess Game of the Wind is a 1976 Iranian film directed by Mohsen Makhmalbaf. It's not directed by Mohsen Makhmalbaf. The film is a psychological drama set in a remote village in Iran, where the residents live in poverty and isolation. No, it isn't. It's set in a very wealthy, like, mansion in not exactly, not a rural, not a remote village. It's sort of a suburb, I guess. And it's about a very wealthy family. The film explores the themes of power, corruption, and the struggle for survival in a harsh and unforgiving environment. Vaguely true. I mean, that's an extremely generic thing to say. One of the film's main strengths is its ability to capture the harsh realities of life in a poor rural community. That's the same as the last sentence, basically, and again, it's not really true. The film's depiction of poverty and isolation of the village is both realistic and moving, and it serves as a powerful commentary on the social and economic conditions of Iran at the time. The film is a powerful commentary on the social and economic conditions of Iran at the time, but not for any of the reasons that ChatGPT has mentioned. The film also explored the theme of power and corruption, and the struggle for survival can lead to moral compromises and the abuse of power. Yeah, sort of. The film's portrayal of the characters and their struggles is also noteworthy. The film presents a complex and nuanced portrayal of the villagers who are trapped in a cycle of poverty and oppression. Kind of. This movie doesn't really focus on the villagers, though. It's mainly about the family. It does focus on some of the servants, but this movie mainly takes place inside the house. The characters are portrayed as both victims and perpetrators, highlighting the complexity of the human condition and the moral ambiguities of survival. The film's use of symbolism and imagery is also noteworthy. The film's use of imagery, such as the chess game, is used to explore the theme of power and the struggle for control. Not really. I think Chess of the Wind, there's almost a listlessness, a futility to it is maybe the main thing that comes from that sort of metaphor. The imagery also serves to create a sense of foreboding and unease, adding to the film's atmosphere and sense of tension. Again, generic statement. Overall, The Chess Game of the Wind is a powerful and thought-provoking film that offers a realistic and nuanced portrayal of life in a poor rural community. Yeah, no, it doesn't. So that review is terrible. Again, seems like written by a high school student needing to get to a word count who has not seen the movie, who maybe glanced at Wikipedia for a few seconds. But here, I mean, this is just really off base. This is such a cool movie. I mean, this movie has so many extremely notable things about it, such as the cinematography is noteworthy because it looks sort of like an oil painting. It's sort of a one of the most beautiful some of the most beautiful imagery you'll find in a movie, and in a very particular style. Obviously, not aware of that at all. Oh yeah, I mentioned this really interesting trivia about how the movie was a lost film for 40 years. That's not there. Okay. I think we've got two more. So we've got The Red Spectacles. I reviewed this on my channel. Another extremely interesting and cool movie. Let's hear what ChatGPT said about it. The Red Spectacles is a 1987 Japanese film directed by Mamoru Oshii. The film is a crime thriller and part of the Pat Labor series. Wait, is that true? I can't remember exactly, but I think the series has a different name, which is set in the near future where the police use giant robots called labors. What? No. To fight crime. Maybe there's a translation thing here. I'm not sure. The film explores themes of memory, identity, and the nature of reality. One of the film's main strengths is its ability to create a sense of mystery and unease. The film's use of symbolism, imagery, and nonlinear storytelling creates a sense of disorientation and confusion that reflects the protagonist's struggles with memory, identity, and the nature of reality. Vaguely in the right ballpark, but the film's exploration of these themes is both thought-provoking and emotionally resonant. This paragraph is not terrible, but it's extremely vague. The film's portrayal of characters and their struggles is also noteworthy. The film presents a complex and nuanced portrayal of the action of the characters who are struggling to come to terms with their past and the nature of reality. The characters are portrayed as both victims and perpetrators. Interesting. The characters are portrayed as both victims and perpetrators, highlighting the complexity of the human condition and the moral ambiguities of survival. We had this exact same sentence in the review for the previous movie. And it's not really true for either of them. You wonder what reviews ChatGPT is plucking some of these things from, but that's an odd one. The film's use of visual effects and cinematography is also noteworthy. The film's use of special effects and animation to depict depict the labors adds a sense of realism and believability to the film, making it visually striking, and memorable. So the film's use of special effects and animation to detect the labors, which again is not the name of anything in this movie, adds a sense of realism. So special effects and animation make the film more realistic and believable. That sentence on its own, in whatever review you'd find that in, doesn't really make any sense. Making it visually striking and memorable. This is an insanely memorable movie and a very visually striking movie. One of the most stylistically off-the-wall movies you'll ever see. That's not really mentioned here. Instead, we just get some sort of vague things about how it has style. The film's use of color and lighting also adds to the film's atmosphere and creates a sense of tension and danger. Yeah, totally generic statement here. The film's use of color and lighting adds to the film's atmosphere and creates a sense of tension and danger. You could say that about almost any movie. In The Red Spectacles, there's very clear use of color and lighting in this movie, so maybe it's not wrong, but you'd think they might mention, for instance, that large portions of this movie are in black and white, while very particular things, like the red spectacles or like the intro, the sort of the prologue, are in color. Interesting. Very clear differences there. The lighting, very clearly based on like some noir type stuff, very expressionistic. We didn't hear anything about that in this review. Anyone who knows anything about movies would pick up on those things immediately upon watching this movie. Overall, The Red Spectacles is a visually striking and thought-provoking film that offers a unique and nuanced exploration of memory, identity, and the nature of reality. The film's use of symbolism, imagery, and this is the beginning again. The film's exploration of these themes is both thought-provoking and emotionally resonant. Again, vague statement. I think we may have even heard that one in one of the past reviews. So again, really not not a good review. Okay, I've got another Audrey Hepburn movie here. This one I've included for a very particular reason, and I'll explain what that is shortly. This movie is called Bloodline. I reviewed it on the channel. Bloodline is a 1979 film directed by Terrence Young and starring Audrey Hepburn and Ben Gazzara. The film is a crime thriller that follows the story of a woman who is drawn into a web of deception and murder when she discovers a dark secret about her husband's past. The film explores themes of trust, betrayal, and the costs of secrets. On some level, this is true, but honestly, the plot of this movie is so convoluted that this is not how you're going to experience it. One of the reasons I included this is because Bloodline is a notoriously bad film. It's probably the worst movie I've reviewed. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. Is ChatGPT going to pick up on that so far? No. One of the film's main strengths is its ability to create a sense of tension and suspense. This movie has no strength. It's terrible. The plot makes no sense. It's not tense or suspenseful. The film's use of plot twists and turns keeps the viewer guessing about the true nature of the characters and their motivation, adding to the film's sense of intrigue and danger. This movie has a great mix of plot twists. Half of the twists make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and the other ones are completely predictable. So either the twist happens and you can't understand it, it's completely opaque and you have no idea what happened, or the twist happens and you don't even realize that it was supposed to be a twist because it's so obvious what was going to happen. The film's exploration of the themes of trust and betrayal is also powerful and thought-provoking. Trust and betrayal are vaguely involved in this movie. That's not wildly incorrect, but pretty vague. The film's portrayal of characters is also noteworthy. The film's portrayal of the characters is noteworthy. Again, so generic. The film presents a complex and nuanced portrayal of the characters who are struggling with their own moral ambiguities and the consequences of their actions. Audrey Hepburn's portrayal of the protagonist is particularly strong as she captures the character's vulnerability and determination. Earlier, we had one of Audrey Hepburn's finest roles. This is one of her worst. Her portrayal of the protagonist is not particularly strong. It's terrible. The film's use of visual effects and cinematography is also noteworthy. The film's use of color and lighting creates a sense of tension and danger. No, it doesn't. There's nothing significant about the color and lighting in this movie, adding to the film's atmosphere and sense of unease. The film's use of locations such as Venice, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think they go to Venice in this movie, also adds to the film's visual appeal, making it visually striking and memorable. This movie is not visually striking. It is memorable because it's terrible. That's it. Overall, Bloodline is a visually striking and thought-provoking, it's not thought-provoking, film that offers a powerful exploration of trust, betrayal, and the cost of secrets. Nope. The film's use of plot twists and turns, blah, 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 blah. The film's portrayal of the characters is complex and nuanced. There's perhaps no more incorrect statement possible in film review than to say that the Bloodline's portrayal of characters is complex and nuanced. The performances from the cast, particularly Audrey Hepburn, are strong and memorable. Again, you literally could not be farther off the mark. So I thought I'd dig a little deeper, and I asked ChatGPT directly, is Bloodline a good movie? And here's what it told me. It depends on one's personal taste and criteria for what makes a good movie. Bloodline is a crime thriller directed by Terrence Young and starring blah, blah, blah. The film received mixed reviews upon its release. Some critics praised the suspenseful plot and strong performances, while others criticized it for being slow-paced and convoluted. Audrey Hepburn's performance was praised, and her portrayal of the protagonist is particularly strong, so incorrect. The film's use of visual effects and cinematography is also noteworthy, with the use of color and lighting creating a sense of tension and danger, and the use of filming locations such as Venice added to the film's visual appeal. However, the film's plot is slow-paced and convoluted. Convoluted, yes. Slow-paced is actually maybe one of the few things I wouldn't criticize this movie for, making it difficult for some viewers to fully engage with the story and its themes. The film's exploration of the themes of trust and betrayal and the cost of secrets is also powerful and thought-provoking. So this is another sort of grammatical mistake here, by the way, because it says it's slow-paced, and then it says these other things are also powerful and thought-provoking. Not exactly a mistake, but it's weird to say also there when you're actually talking about something that contradicts the last sentence. Anyway, so whether or not Bloodline is a good movie depends on your personal taste and criteria. If you enjoy crime thriller here's another grammatical error. If you enjoy crime thriller, that should say crime thrillers, with a complex plot and strong performances, you may find it to be a good movie. But if you prefer more action-packed movies, you may find it slow and convoluted. I think there's something extremely interesting about this. So first of all, again, we see that ChatGPT really does not know anything about the movie itself. Anyone with half a brain knows that this is a terrible movie. We don't need to trot out some, film is subjective thing. Some people might like it. No, come on. That is true for the most part, but this movie is obviously whack. Falls way past the mark. No matter what you like, you're going to have to admit that. Now, if you're curious, go watch my review of it. There are a couple of things about it that are more interesting or more nuanced. There's a couple of glimmers here and there, but for the most part, anyone who's worth listening to knows that this is a terrible movie. What's particularly interesting about this answer to me, though, is that the things that it's picking out as the things you might complain a bit about are an axis of cinema that's as old as movies itself in some ways. It's got powerful ideas, but it's too slowly paced, right? This answer to this question could almost be used for, like, a lot of the movies I do on this channel that are more sort of intellectual art house things. Yeah, it's got powerful ideas, but it's slowly paced, and the plot is a bit convoluted, so you might get bored. That's basically what it's saying, and that's an extremely common answer that would make sense in a lot of contexts. Now, Bloodline is actually not a movie that could be really described that way, because one of the few things it isn't exactly slowly paced. This movie is a thriller, and you can see that in the last sentence that it really gets turned around here. It says, if you enjoy crime thrillers with a complex plot and strong performances, you may find it to be a good movie. But if you prefer more action-packed movies, you may find it slow and convoluted. So if you enjoy crime thrillers, you might like it. But if you want things that are action-packed, you might not like it. Crime thrillers are action-packed. So it seems like it's taking sort of a generic answer to this, where it's like, if you like boring movies, you might like it, which is a very common thing to say. And it's trying to apply that in a case where it really makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, we've got just one more to review. I think you guys probably get the idea, but while I was there, I figured I'd poke around. Again, these are all movies I've reviewed. So the last one is The Man. And The Man is a very interesting sort of pseudo-blaxploitation, not really blaxploitation movie, where James Earl Jones is elected president of the United States. You should go check out my review for it. Interesting movie. Here's what ChatGPT had to say. The Man is a 1972 film directed by Joseph Sargent and starring James Earl Jones, who plays the role of a successful African-American businessman who is falsely accused of a crime he did not commit. In fact, this is not what the movie is about at all. Like I said, James Earl Jones becomes the president of the United States. The film explores the themes of racial prejudice, injustice, and the fight for justice. Fair enough. One of the film's main strengths is its ability to address the issue of racial prejudice and the injustices that can occur as a result. The film's depiction of the discrimination and mistreatment of the protagonist is both realistic and powerful, and it serves as a powerful commentary on the ongoing struggle for civil rights and equality. Sure, these are sentences that you could write about any sort of vaguely civil rights-ish movie. The film also explores the theme for the fight for justice and how the protagonist's determination to prove his innocence and clear his name is a powerful message of perseverance and resilience. You can see, I don't know, at least to me, it just seems like, yeah, ChatGPT knows about a lot of sort of civil rights films or whatever. It's kind of got this bag of sentences to pull out of there. It's kind of in the ballpark here. It doesn't know enough about, to be fair, a pretty obscure movie to really know what it's about. And it also doesn't really know more than kind of this general grab bag of like things that are sort of true for movies in a certain category. What it's missing is any kind of insight, and also in this case, any kind of accuracy. Of course, this is a pretty obscure movie. I actually had to buy this movie on DVD to be able to watch it. So we don't need to be too hard on it, I guess. Anyway, here's the rest. The film's portrayal of the characters and their struggle is also noteworthy. Again, the film's portrayal of characters and their struggles is also noteworthy. I think we had that exact sentence in a previous review, and that's not a meaningful sentence. The film presents a complex and nuanced portrayal of the characters who are struggling to come to terms with the injustices they have suffered and the prejudice they have encountered. The characters are portrayed as both victims and perpetrators, highlighting the complexity of the human condition and the moral ambiguities of survival. Third time we get that sentence. The film's use of visual effects and cinematography is also noteworthy. I'm pretty sure we had that again. The film's use of color and lighting creates a sense of tension and danger, adding to the film's atmosphere and sense of unease. There is nothing significant about the color and lighting of this film at all. In fact, this movie looks like crap. It was made for television. Maybe this, basically, at least the copy I got looked like it was ripped off a VHS tape. Looked terrible. And there's nothing stylistically really significant about this movie at all. The film's use of filming locations, such as the courthouse and the prison, the movie does not contain either one of those, also adds to the film's visual appeal, making it visually striking and memorable. At least they didn't say they went to Venice. Overall, The Man is a powerful and thought-provoking film that offers a realistic and nuanced portrayal of racial prejudice, injustice, and the fight for justice. The film's depiction of the discrimination and mistreatment of the protagonist is both realistic and powerful, and it serves as a powerful commentary on the ongoing struggle for civil rights and equality. The film's portrayal of the characters is complex and nuanced, and the performance of the cast, particularly James Earl Jones, are strong and memorable. So we had that sentence again, but with Audrey Hepburn earlier. So look, overall, I think you kind of get a sense. Word salad to some degree. I mean, if you are in a high school film class and you didn't do your homework and you want to fake it at the last second, maybe this is a good approach. But for anything sort of more than that, this isn't really going to work. Like I said, ChatGPT is not watching the movies. It's synthesizing these reviews out of other reviews, basically. Not just other reviews, a lot of different information, but basically it's taking other work on the film and combining them. So sure, when you've got famous movies, it can do a decent job at summarizing at a very high level, and it seems to have some understanding of like, okay, there's kind of different genres here, something like that. And it seems to sort of be able to get like some keywords about the plot, right? And remember, of course, that keywords about a film's plot, that's been a thing for a long time. Like IMDb, Wikipedia, tons of sources have keywords about a movie's plot and have had for a long time. So understanding like, oh, a certain movie is a bit like this, that's technology that we've had for a long time. Not that complicated. But ChatGPT can seemingly sort of access that information and understand, oh, well, this is kind of a movie about this sort of stuff, so let's sort of write things about this. Like here we have The Man, which clearly it doesn't have any like, it hasn't read a lot of reviews of The Man itself, but it sort of understands like, this is kind of a civil rights movie. There's a crime involved or something like that. There must be this courthouse and a prison. It kind of stitches something together. But obviously none of these are really very good reviews, and the channel stays in business. I think it's also worth pointing out that, like I said, these are synthesizing things from other reviews. So stuff like this is not going to work for movies that have just come out, movies that nobody has seen, right? You will need somebody to generate the initial review until we get ChatGPT actually watching the movie or some sort of thing that's watching the movie. But that's a challenge that's on another sort of order of magnitude, particularly the perception of the visual information of a film and the understanding of the visual information along with the plot. Watching a movie, much harder than just like reading a summary of the film or reading a review or something like that. So long story short, movie reviews are safe. And although there are definitely things where ChatGPT is going to help simplify things, and there are definitely places in the copywriting world where, where things are going to change and where it's pretty, maybe a decent resource for summarizing certain things, maybe a decent alternative to Googling certain terms. You can also see that it has factual errors in a lot of these things. And so I'd be wary sometimes even about that, especially if you're looking at things that are not widely known or mainstream concepts. So like I said, the channel's still in business, and I guess I'll see you next week.